Good morning. First, let me say thank you to all of you, and a special thanks to Robert and to Stepan for having us here. It's very exciting to be part of this project, and I think what is most exciting is to see something that is beginning as an idea and becoming a practice, and this is something that we never take for granted. I think it's really a good opportunity, and the fact that we are maybe contributing to a way of minimizing the impact of trauma is a great idea. In the first part of our presentation, I would like to concentrate on the development of the community focus and the resilience work that we do in Israel. I think this is perhaps a little different perspective than what was shown here. I just want to say, for those of you who don't know Israel very well, that until 1991, when we are speaking of terror-related trauma, Israel, the war in Israel was fought on the front with soldiers, and the Israeli society was relatively safe. We are not exposed, I'm talking of mass casualties, we are not exposed, or were not exposed in the last years to any natural disasters. We are speaking of terror. We are speaking of terror-related trauma, and until 1991, only soldiers fought the war. But in 1991, there was the threat of the Gulf War from Iraq to Israel, and every family in Israel had to prepare for the war, and they had to have in their homes gas masks and to have a sheltered room in their homes. And all of a sudden, all of the Israeli society was exposed to this threat. A lot of anxiety, and of course there was a great shift in service provision towards working with the Israeli society. 10 years later, there was what we call in Israel the Intifada, the uprising of terror attacks, and for 3 years there were many terror attacks all over the country. The terror attacks happened everywhere, anytime. There was no safe place, and whole families and communities were affected. And that, of course, also contributed to the shift in service provision and to the way we view how we need to take care of communities and families. What worked until then was mostly the medical model, where a person with post-traumatic symptoms came or was brought to the therapist and had sessions in order to make him feel better. But here we were faced with whole families and whole communities, and this model wasn't enough anymore for the number of people and for the issues that came up, because it was a different perspective. It was then in 2001 that the Israel Trauma Coalition was created. The Israel Trauma Coalition is a partnership of 40 organizations, 40 NGOs, non-government organizations, that each provide either direct care or training to people or to teams all over the country. And we came together in order to create a shared language, a shared culture, to make sure that there are no overlaps or no gaps in service provision as much as we can. So at the beginning, we began by providing direct care to people and to families and communities in very different ways. We provided direct care, but quite immediately we realized that the caregivers are also impacted, and therefore, we understood that we need to also provide training and support to teams who are providing care, because they also were exposed. And if you look at this triangle, this sort of describes our work. We work bottom up, because we work with the population, with the individuals. We work with the teams by training them and supporting them. And then we developed a citywide model, which I will describe a little later. And we work with the government. And so we work bottom up. We do mapping of the needs on the ground. And we influence policy making in Israel. But we work top-down. Because we work with the policymakers, we now work with 8 ministries in Israel and the Home Front Command, and so we work together towards changing policy, and we actually managed to do quite a few things to work with the communities and the local councils. We work also, which is, I think, comes up here again and again, what is the time frame that we work, all of us, referring to? Is it the acute phase, or is it the long aftercare that we are talking about? So in Israel, because there is ongoing security situations, we work during 3 time phases: before, during, and after an emergency. We work on the age continuum, because we work with very young children, with adolescents, with adults, and with elderly. And we work on the exposure continuum, because we work with the victims, and then we work with the circles of people who are exposed, and we provide them with training. We look at the society as a whole. It is comprised of individuals and families and communities and caregivers. They are all part of this society, and we use the word for the past years, civil resilient society, because we believe that every person in our society can contribute and should have the tools to cope. And if you have the tools to cope, then you can help not only yourself, but others. So who do we work with? First of all, it's agreed here that in times of emergency, because reality changes so fast, so everybody is under a lot of strain. Everybody needs to understand what is the reality. Many things are not familiar anymore, and people need to rely on other people for informations and instructions. In Israel, again, when there is an escalation or rise in the military, in the security situation, then we receive instructions from the Home Front Command, and people need to know to adhere to these instructions. So this is for everybody, but of course, for people with special needs, this is only intensified in times of emergency, and therefore we believe that as well as anybody else, people with special needs need to be prepared so that it will make a feeling of control and understanding that they can cope. We see it as our responsibility. This is what we do on an everyday basis, and we shift in Israel from working in routine times to working in emergency times, which of course makes people sometimes more cooperative than when it is you're talking about something that is only theoretical. We are aware of cultural differences in our work, because we have many different groups in Israel. We have we have a lot of new immigrants. We have the ultra-Orthodox, which are a society on their own. We have the Arab population, and every training that we do is tailor-made to the needs of the population that we work with. We keep hearing here how important it is to help people to be more in control. We heard the term self-efficacy here a lot of times. We think that there is also collective efficacy when you work with not only with the person, but with the whole community, then there are better chances that they will work together, not only in times of routine, but also in times of emergency. I would like to share with you a model that was developed in Israel. We began by calling it a citywide model, but now we call it the Resilience Center model, because the words affect a lot of the reality, and we shifted from using the word victim to using the word resilience, and that is not just a word, it has a lot of impact on the way we think. We created in Israel a model at the invitation of the Prime Minister that deals with whole cities, and the idea is very simple. We do this model has 4 legs or 4 venues. One is we go into the city and we do a mapping of the needs and and the resources that exist in this city. And in the mapping, of course, one of the things that is done is the mapping of population or people with special needs, because a city that wants to be better equipped to deal with its citizens in times of emergency needs to know where people with special needs are for reasons of providing medicine, food, of if you need to be evacuated or go to the shelter. Some of them are not able to go to the shelter, and so this is something that we take into account. So we do a mapping of needs and resources, and one of the results of this mapping is that we understand what sort of training the teams, and when I say teams, I mean also volunteers, not only professional teams, what sort of training do the teams in this local council needs, and we provide the team training. And again, we volunteer. We train a lot of volunteers because in times of emergency, usually the professionals are overwhelmed by work, and if they have trained volunteers to help them, then it will be better for them to help the population. So the first thing we do is mapping. The second thing we do is training. The third thing that we do is we create a continuum of care. And when we say continuum of care, again, I mean the stages in time. We care for people immediately, people with anxiety, immediately after the event. We open clinics that have both volunteers and professionals that are trained in first emotional aid, and they provide care to these individuals. This minimizes the people who develop post-trauma. And then, of course, afterwards, we have in the community trained professionals on the time continuum that will provide care according to what is needed to these professionals. This is quite a challenge because we need to also make sure that there are trained therapists to work with children, which is a different language sometimes. And again, we have the cultural differences, so we have quite a few of challenges there. But I must say that over the years, we developed in Israel quite a large variety of interventions, immediate interventions that are very effective. And the last leg, or the last venue that we work with, is the venue of the community resilience. We invest a lot of resources in creating a community collaboration, especially working with populations that are more vulnerable and can, where this work will move them from the place that they are to a better way to deal with the emergencies. When you look at a community, you need to look at all its parts, and of course, the parts of a community are the individuals, and the resilience of the community is created by working with people who are resilient. So we need to invest a lot in making people more resilient and more aware that they can cope in times of emergency. So over the years, we've developed guidelines with the Home Front Command and with the ministries that we work with to work with the populations, to work with teams, and one of the things that we are facing now, and it's quite challenging, is the work that we are doing as part of this project with the special populations. In this case, we will share with you the work that is being done in Israel with the deaf and the blind. Okay, over the years, this is the work that we've been involved with over the years. We work after disasters in the world. We work along the same principles. Wherever we go post-disaster, we always find a local partner. We never work without a local partner. We never do the work directly abroad because we believe that the local community knows its community best. They should work with the community, and therefore, when we go abroad, we work with the caregivers, we train them, and sometimes we give them for supervision. For example, in Japan, we just got the 6th mission just came back, and we had in between missions, we had long distance phone supervision. So there are many ways now in the world to keep working with trainers that we train in other places.
Thank you. With all that said, let's go to the theme that actually we are sitting here for, and that is working with people with hearing or sight impairments. So just to kind of look at the situation, this is one of the demonstrations of a dialogue between a seeing person and a visually impaired person. Now, of course, there are many conclusions that may be drawn from this, but the one thing that we are referring to is what is our part as people who are able to see when we're talking, when we're having a dialogue with people that cannot actually see or that are having difficulties in sight. And this dialogue is a dialogue of two people that actually may be conversing with each other but never listening to each other. There is the second option, and the second option is to be able to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes. And we believe that none of these two approaches is the approach that we would like to use, because when we create a dialogue, and this is what we hope to be able to create, is a dialogue between people that are actually looking at their own routine ways. And why am I saying routine? Because by looking at your routine life, you are able to look at what is going to be changed when there is an emergency, because an emergency or a disaster is usually a change of your regular habits and your regular way of living. Only I can tell to myself or tell myself what would change in my way of living if there's going to be a disaster. Only somebody else can do it for themselves if they have any disabilities. So the dialogue that we're trying to create and the dialogue that we're talking about is an ongoing dialogue of two groups, actually. And I'm sorry that we're talking about groups because we keep talking about individuals, and individuals are very important in this case. But before we start talking about the individuals, we have to be able to identify what are the real needs. And Tali mentioned before that we're working through different phases of disaster, and it's very important for us when we look at this dialogue, when we're creating the dialogue, to be able to discuss each part of this life cycle of disaster, which we're not going to go in. And another principle that is very important to this is that the dialogue should consist, the way we believe, should consist on risk assessment. Because what is actually the meaning of the whole thing of preparing guidelines and being able to help people with impairments? The idea is that we need to look at our regular lives and see where the hazards and risks are going to be. Let's use one very simple example. We were working with people in a center for blind and visually impaired people. And they tell us, and you're going to see in a second in a focus group with a different group of visually impaired people, that they are very much independent because they're able to get on the bus from home, go to the center independently without any help. I mean, they use sticks or dogs or whatever they usually use. And they say, okay, if there's going to be a disaster, okay, we'll get on the bus and we'll go back home. But who can promise you that the bus is going to be there when there's going to be a disaster? Who is going to promise you that the pavement that you usually used to walk by is actually going to be there, and maybe there's going to be a big stone that's going to come down because of the earthquake or whatever that is. So this is the way that we're trying to think about things. What are the possible hazards that we are actually going to confront when something happens? And if we look at the hazards in the different stages of the life cycle of a disaster, and if we look on the two that I just mentioned through both eyes, and maybe it's a wrong phrase to use, but through the eyes of the people that are able to see, and through the eyes of the people that are not able to see, or they have very bad sight, or through the eyes or through the ears of people that can hear, and through the ears or the eyes or the minds of the people that are not able to, and only when we do it together, we will be able to come to certain conclusions that are going to help both sides. Why are we talking about both sides? Because when we talk about end users of a project like this one, we're actually talking about the people with the impairments that are end users on one hand, and there are end users on the other hand, the people that have to make the policies and the people that have to make all the adjustments and the guidelines. We consider these groups also as end users, and that's why we need to have, again, a dialogue. One example of this dialogue is this booklet that we came up with, and I'm sorry that we can't bring too many of these and just give one to each of you, because we're out of them, actually. It's probably one of the last examples. But this is a conversation book for first responders.
Can you pass
and
it
just
around?
to give you some examples of what is actually done in there. And again, this was done in a dialogue, or within a dialogue between people that are able to see, people that are experts in emergency situations, and on the other hand, people that are actually going to be using this, first responders and people with hearing impairments. And of course, this is for people that are able to see. So this is divided into 5 sections. The first section is like regular questions. Now, here is the experience. You're looking at this, and it's all in Hebrew, Arabic, Russian, and Amharic. So it should be someone, no, the Amharic is a different one. And you're looking at this and you're saying to yourself, what the hell is it? So this is what it is. Okay, so this is a little bit of the experience of being there and not being able to say what it is. The next section is key sentences that we think people are going to need to use. And of course, this is the translation for this. I wonder if it's the same sign language. Is it? No. Okay.
No, it's different.
Different. Okay, now we're going through support sentences for people in distress, which is very important for us. And again, when we were talking about this yesterday, when you do sign language translation, the order of the words is changed, but the most important thing is that people will understand it. And the next part is kind of definitions of different emergencies. And of course, you can use this by bringing this to an encounter. The reason it's going around, the reason why it's a small booklet is because you can put it in your pocket. And when you go, like a firefighter goes to a place, maybe you can just pull it out and use it, either show the person or try and sign with your hands. And you know that this is usually works. And there is another piece of this, which is just additional words that we thought together with the end users of both sides that people may need, like a doctor or anxious or nurse or whatever. And yesterday there was some discussion about this, what happens to people when they go to the doctor's office. And this could be helping also in there. So this is one example of the work that was done, and this was done with, again, with the end users of both sides. And we come to the conclusion of this presentation with going back to this project right here. And so big surprises, it's very much the same as most of the presentations that were here. Pretty much the same mission of looking at, if you look at the procedures, doing a literature review, going through focus groups, and all the rest of this. So I want to just go through the 2 stages that have already been done. One is the literature review, which I'm not going to go through the details. I think everybody, or maybe one of the things that we should do is kind of join all the literature reviews together, because a lot of us did that work, and it's a shame that it's going to be wasted. I think one of the missions here is just to collect all the literature reviews for everybody to use, if everybody is willing to share, of course. And then we went to the focus groups, and this is where we are right now. We finished up working with our focus groups, and when you see the criteria or the questions, you see that it's pretty much similar to what other groups have been doing. And these are the groups that we've been able to do up until now. There's one more group of social workers that are actually working with people with impairments. We didn't have the data yet to put it inside. For next time, we're going to have it. So we have exactly 31 people with hearing impairments and 13 with visual impairments. The groups were done up in the northern part of Israel in a city, or some of the settlements that are very much close to the Lebanese border. And the reason why I'm telling you about it is because most of the experience of those people is in regard to going to shelters, being bombed by rockets and stuff like this, something that we're very happy that we did not experience for the last 7 years already. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And thank you. I'm thinking about this because this is where I live, but Ali reminds me that in the southern part of Israel, we do experience that very often. So you're going to see that some of the remarks of the people, and we actually gathered very few remarks and kind of collided them together or put them together, this is going to influence what people are saying. So what they're saying actually, and this is the hearing impaired people, the 31 people, and they are saying the most important thing for us is one-on-one communication. This is the main thing that we're looking for. This is the main issue. These are the main difficulties. And they keep talking about how they're not understood even when they're talking to somebody, you know, actually talking, they keep talking about our heavy language. There is a heaviness in the way that we're talking, so people are not patient with us, people lose patience, and this is something that we were able to see yesterday in some of the presentations. They say they have issues with the doctor's office and with the firefighters, and the most problems that they have is with the city people, city officials or city clerks or anybody who's working in the city, because there people are losing patience even more than in other places. They're talking about maintaining eye contact, which is very important for, and of course we don't need to explain why, and of course talking slowly and clearly, but there is one thing that was overwhelming for us, and we can see it, I guess, in the next slide. One of the things is, or two actually, overwhelming issues. One is the family support or neighbor support or next of kin support. They say in times of crisis and disaster, make sure that you use our families and our neighbors to communicate with us. This would be the best communication method. The other thing is, and I don't know if I see it in here, but something that was very, very important for people, they said most of the work that we do is by lip reading. So make sure that when you speak to us, you look at us. And make sure that if there is a public communication or communication with a large number of people, make sure that there are big screens so we can actually lip read what people are saying. And this was really surprising for us because we were pretty sure that you know, sign language was much more prevalent than lip reading. So large screens, speak slowly again. Use of beepers and videos, something that you know about. They were complaining that there were not enough lists, official lists or official mapping of where they are and who they are, and sometimes people didn't know about them. So this was important for them, community support. And now moving to the 13 people in the focus groups for visual impairment, they were talking about two main issues. One is mobility, which is, you know, obvious, and the other one was the lack of supplies. How will they get supplies? Now this needs a little explanation. In the city where we were doing this, and some of you were in the city in Kiryat Shmona, people are experienced in going to shelters and sitting in the shelters for over like 24 hours sometimes. And the city organizes supplies to go to the people. The way it's organized, there are two main ways. One is that volunteers are going to bring the supplies to the shelters. And the other way, which is the most usual way, is that the schools in the districts are actually becoming some kind of resilience centers, and supplies are coming to the schools, and you have to come to the school and take a family supply thing. So how would the supplies get to people with visual impairments if they actually need to go there? This was a worry that was actually being expressed very, very heavily over there. We were mentioning yesterday in the discussion group the issue of CERT, Community Emergency Response Team, and we're actually trying to establish community emergency teams in settlements and in neighborhoods or sometimes in boroughs in the cities, and it's an ongoing process that's being built now. The reason why I'm mentioning this right now is that part of the work of this CERT team, or that the team, is to map people with different, I would say, difficulties, because we're not only talking about people with impairments, we're also talking about people with like if you have old parents or aging parents and you want to make sure that they're being taken care of. If, for instance, there is a, I would go to the stereotype, a lady with 3 small children and her husband is a doctor in the emergency room and he's going to be there or in the army or in you know, the police force, and she's going to be left by herself with 3 little children. It's always 3 in the stereotypes, right? So somebody needs to know about her and be able to help her. So this mapping system is actually working, and part of the mapping system is also to match people like neighbors and other people in the community that in times of emergency, they will be able to quickly move over to that house and see that everything is taken care of. Recommendations coming from the focus groups, mainly, you know, again, preparedness is one of the most important issues. Psychoeducation, not surprising. There was a big, I would say even cry, to create special units within the municipalities to take care of people with disabilities. I'm not sure that this is going to be possible with the budget issues and all that stuff, but in every municipal in Israel or municipality in Israel, there is one office that takes care of welfare issues. Right now, it's being taken care of through the welfare issues, but the people in the focus group thought that it would be good to have a special unit for that. And of course, all the technological issues. And our next steps are, you know, as follows, pretty much in line with what everybody was presenting in here. So,
Thank you, Uvi. I have 2 remarks and we are done. One is just for the protocol. We did not discuss children here a lot in the last day and a half. And I think there are 2 kinds of children when we speak of populations with special needs. One is the children that are themselves children with special needs, and of course they need special services, and we need to train their families and caregivers for times of emergency. And the other population of children is the children of parents with special needs. And these children are often left with a lot of responsibility in times of emergency. People think that they can shoulder a lot of responsibility, and if we don't make sure that they get some sort of help from the community, then they will be left alone with a very big burden. That's one remark. And the other thing is, there is this saying that the difference between illness and wellness is the difference between the I and the we. And I think that in the work that we do, working together is the key to be better prepared and to cope better with emergencies. And I think working here together with you is an example of that. So thank you very much.